Buddy Eye is a love letter to the games that we already know, the masterpieces we could not fairly review. In an attempt to relive those intimate and challenging moments from our own personal video game Disney vaults, experiences that we generally had alone, Connor and AJ bring each other games that matter to us, and see if the experiences that we had individually are shared. And most importantly, we ask if the game still holds up since the first time we played it. But before we go any further, this should serve as your spoiler alert. We are not going to limit how we discuss these games, so if you don't want any secrets spoiled, maybe skip this one. The Beginner's Guide is by Davey Wreden via Everything Unlimited Limited and was released in 2015, hoping to capitalize on the success Davey experienced with his 2013 The Stanley Parable.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly
Unlike the
well.
Stanley Parable, the voice guiding you through this game is no stranger. It is Davey himself, as he tells you the story that is framed around his life. The story of his friendship with a coder named Coda the Coder. Davey is using the Beginner's Guide to test a theory he has about Coda and other people that make games. He describes it best.
This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here.
Davey constructs the Beginner's Guide, which is essentially a walking simulator through a series of unfinished projects that Coda sent him over a few years of friendship. Over the course of the Beginner's Guide, you learn certain things about Coda and Davey and maybe the less than great friendship the two shared with one another. Davey tells you that he's released this game, the Beginner's Guide, in an attempt to understand Coda better. He's returning to one of his most reliable resources, his fans, to give him like psychiatric insight on his friend Coda, and right off the bat, that sets up some very strange and some challenging concepts. One of those concepts that I want to touch on is the idea of video games and what is playable.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that. This is something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
One of the few pieces of gameplay in the Beginner's Guide outside of just walking around is this door puzzle. It's a simple puzzle that becomes the most significant theme in this game. More on that as we go on.
Don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon. We're gonna see it a lot. Okay, this one is tough. It's gonna kinda just spin its own wheels for a few minutes. Hang with it.
A few of Coda's projects that you play through are really promising, but ultimately unfinished. They're unrefined ideas. But as you continue through the chapters of the game and Davey starts showing you more and more of just the raw states of these projects, you can see Coda's creative process. In the background here, you can see Coda as he tries to refine an idea that he has in his head. Over the course of this project, this game, or at least what we see from Davey, has at least 8 different iterations, all completely different, but reusing similar ideas. I really like this as someone who likes to pretend to work creatively every now and then. It's rare to see a storyteller craft a story. It's rare to remember that these geniuses, the people that we put on pedestals that create so much better than we do or have created and have this proof of creation, that so many people I know are still striving for, myself included. It's really helpful to remember that nobody nails it on the first draft, and just to have an example in a world that you don't think about. Game design has the same exact multiple draft scenario. At the end of this creative process, Coda actually lands on a really cool concept for a prison game, which I'm just going to show you a clip of here. Here's where we should mention one of the big interpretations of this game is the idea that it's all one big meta conversation around game design. This comes up a few times throughout the game, the idea that Coda is actually a representation of Davey and he's just having one conversation with himself. It's an interesting interpretation. I don't dislike the idea of Coda not being a real character. We'll get into that more in the future. The idea of Coda being a real person actually is gut-wrenching by the end of this game. So I'm really open to that interpretation. As far as taking it to say that it's Davey working through some of the worst parts of working in the game industry, maybe. Some of those nuances come in like the third or fourth playthrough. It's not the thing that resonated with me the most on this gaming experience, but I encourage you to pick it up and try it, especially if you have interest in knowing more about how game designers design games. One major theme that continues to come up, and the second one I want to focus on, is what attracted me the most to this game the first time I played it, and that's how it discusses depression. Throughout the game, it has lots of great metaphors, but my favorite is this house right here. This house is an extrapolation on the puzzle door that we saw earlier. It's another draft, allowing Coda to refine his vision. This perfect comfort in the middle of an otherwise unsettling place, a place with a never-ending list of chores that would make it so easy to stay. The acknowledgement that it is essential to clean your house sometimes, but if you do it forever, you will die. And later in the game, you find out that this house, originally, you would just go around cleaning things forever. The original version of the game that Coda sent Davey just looped. Davey had to change it in order to make it playable for this game. Then there's the ultimate reminder that you are the only person that can take you out of your metaphorical house. I still play this game when I'm depressed. I first came to it in a really dark time in college, and it was just a perfect metaphor. It didn't make me feel better. It wasn't like a miracle cure. It didn't make my depression go away, but sometimes it's really nice to just have that thing in front of you and thing you can work through, and just a reminder that it's not so unique to be going through this. And just to have that reminder at the end of it that you have to turn around and flip that switch to make the door closed and open it again. You have to make the choice to continue living. It reminds me of a quote from a podcast that I really like called Fat Man on Batman. Kevin Conroy, who is the voice actor that plays Batman in almost everything, is talking about a play that he's doing, one of his very first professional plays, and it doesn't go well. And John Houseman, who is like the guy who founded Juilliard, essentially, is in this play with him. And Kevin Conroy has read these terrible critical reviews of his performance specifically. And Houseman comes into this like darkened dressing room and says to him, "Every man has a time in his life when he must put one foot in front of the other and simply get on with the business of living. I trust that this is one of those times." That's paraphrasing, because I've listened to that several years ago, but it gets me through so much, just that idea that no matter what, the idea of getting on with the business of living, the putting ourselves through the next doorway, is the only way we can really solve these internal issues at the end of the day. It's on us. And whether that is, putting one foot in front of the other or creating a support group that you can go to and being able to ask for help, which kind of segues us to the third point of this one in the context of the beginner's guide, where Coda goes to Davey. He starts sending these games that have less metaphorical implications for depression and are more actual cries for help to a friend. And Davey sees these games, these pleas, if he reads them as he does, to be so. And instead of reaching out to his friend, Davey chooses to publish all of the games Coda sent him to this point in an attempt to make him feel better. And that's kind of the third point of this one, friendship. The third and final act kind of sets up these questions for what does it mean to be a good friend to someone who is clearly experiencing these signs of hurt and anguish. And as you get into this third stage, this third act, Coda shows us this plea for help on the stage, and it's just another perfect metaphor.
It's how you stay alive. The game ends with this eerie premonition of what's going to happen next in Coda's life. The solution to social anxiety, to fears of having to perform and having to chase success, the answer for Coda is to withdraw, to hide himself away. Which is what leads to scenarios like the stairs that slowed you down several games ago, where it just becomes harder and harder to access Coda's inner landscape because he keeps retreating. He just keeps backing away from possible connections to anyone other than himself. And to be honest, I didn't consider it very healthy when I first played.
So as the time between Coda's projects gets longer, Davey is showing the projects to people in the games industry in an attempt to show Coda that the games he's creating are something to be proud of, are something worth creating. He does this without Coda's permission, ultimately. And you end the game with the last project that Coda sent Davey, and it's called The Tower. The Tower is a unplayable, dark, very morbid style game. There are three checkpoints. The first the first one's an invisible maze that every time you hit a wall, you get reset to the beginning. Nothing about that. That's just it. It's a very difficult maze that's impossible to beat. Davey gets us past that one, edits the game. Then you get to the second challenge, which looks like this, and it's just a big dial with 6 digits, and there's absolutely no way to guess the password. I gave it my best go here and didn't get it. So Davey gives us the password. We keep moving, and then you get to this third obstacle with a door and no handle, no button, no way to get into it. There is a button. It's on the other side of the door. You have to break the game now at this point to get through it. Those 3 obstacles, not meant to get past. So when you get to the top of the tower, there's a little more context to seeing, well, this.
I'm the reason that you stopped making games, aren't I? It's because of what I did.
There is a feeling change in this game. It is completed at the tower. At the beginning of the game, you're Team Davey, for sure. Personally, by the end of the game, I hate the fact that I've played this game. And I have to remind myself that it is just a narrative-driven story. That it's very, very good at its job, because I am angry by the time Davey starts to justify his actions and justify making you play this game. It's just a sense of entitlement that is obviously not realized by the narrator, and it makes me so angry and steamed that Davey feels entitled to this friendship with Coda, that Davey feels entitled to these games, and was just using it to benefit himself, to make himself feel better. I mean, he says so as plainly in the very last moments of the game, as he's kind of having this full-on mental breakdown while you are just sitting there walking through this art gallery dedicated to calling Davey a piece of crap. And it is weird. It's a weird feeling. At the very end of the game, Davey is sandwiched. Or you are sandwiched, not Davey. You, the player, is sandwiched in the door puzzle. Like, you go inside of it, and there's no switch on the inside, and the other door, a Star Wars trash compactor style, slowly crushes you, and it ends just before there's no more room. I think this is a very interesting place to start talking about with your friends the concept of depression and what do you need from me, instead of just assuming what your friends need. Actually, I want to bring Connor in and see what he thinks of this game at this point, and see if maybe these conversation points that I'm having are the same that he is having, or if he's taken something completely different from the beginner's guide. So Connor Volts, come on down. All right, so Connor, what did you think of the beginner's guide? Just lay it out.
Well, first off, this game was very, thought intriguing. I felt like this game, really pushed me to think, and first off, the games themselves, were very, simple, but, I was developing a very, weird story in my head, something I feel like a lot of people naturally kind of come to when playing this game, and it was totally shattered by the end. I feel like the tower really broke me off, and when I entered the very top of the tower, I guess where you call it, the top, when everything is revealed to you.
That art gallery area?
Yeah, the art gallery, I really stopped. I stopped in the game when we were playing, and I was like, whoa, the music changes and everything. It's a total change for the entire game, and I really feel like the whole game really made me think, and then by the end I was just like, I'm totally wrong.
Yeah.
So
I think that change there, that realization that you're complacent in something that would very much not be liked. It feels like you're stealing something from Coda. I do, personally.
Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
all. And I feel dirty.
Very dirty. Very dirty. So a couple of questions, just to kind of the questions that I have after the game. I'm curious if they came up for you. We play a lot of walking simulators here on Constantine and Albatross.
Yeah.
So the question posed to us: do games need to be playable?
In terms of playing through this game and what Coda does, I'm the type of player who would wait an hour just to see what happened. I'm the type of guy who would wait. I don't think for the masses, if you're mass producing games, then they need to be. I don't think that Coda's games were unplayable. I just think they needed to be easier. They were just hard games. They were games you had to do nothing for, where your logic didn't really interact with the game at all, where in the end you really just had to wait an hour, or in the end you really just had to climb up the stairs until you made it.
So I in that world, the tower level, Davey was never supposed to get to the top of the tower. He had to break the game to do so.
See, and that's what makes me think that it was Coda being because of the way that Davey argued about it. Coda knew that he wasn't playing his games. Coda knew he wasn't playing his games to the full potential. And so he made he made the tower intentionally for Davey.
Yeah.
He made that game for Davey because he knew that Davey would cheat to win.
And if Davey had just respected Coda's boundaries, didn't cheat the game, just played it how he had meant it to be, you never get to the top.
Yep.
You never lose your friendship.
Yep.
Is there a message in this game that you found to be kind of especially true?
It's really ironic how we both kind of found the same message, but the game that I really struck with in this entire thing was the depression game, the cleaning game. Sorry, I call it the depression game just because it harkens to me so much, and something I kind of want to kind of want to touch on, like listening through and listening to your description of this game afterwards and everything, doing the proofreading. I just really, it wasn't so much the game that harkened on me, but the music. And I kind of want this music to kind of play right now during this, and just listen to how calming and like relaxing it is. Like, this music really puts me into like a trance, and like the repetitiveness almost just makes me like just calm even further. And I don't know what it is about it, but I think that combined with the repetitiveness of the game really just brings you down.
Yeah.
And it's something I really love. That, and also like just like friendships in general, and just like trying not to think too much, because I'm somebody who overthinks. So I feel like it's something that you have to be communicative, you know?
Yeah.
And that's something that harkened to me. Is just like, you have to talk to somebody. If there's something wrong with somebody, or somebody you care about especially, you should talk to them. You shouldn't just be like, oh, this is what I think, because based on the information I have, you know? It's something you should be like, hey, is there something bothering you?
Yeah,
You sent me quite a few signs. Is there something wrong?
To kind of touch on the whole music thing, it is a perfect lo-fi beat to just sit and bob your head to, and it kind of gets that room is quicksand. And I think anybody who's experienced depression knows deeply the feeling that room kind of puts you in.
That's a perfect metaphor. That room is quicksand.
Yeah. By the time you realize you're in quicksand and, oh shit, this is a bad time, you're at your head. You're under the quicksand. You kind of answered my second question, or my next question already, which was, would you handle the situation Davey finds himself in any differently? Would you release the games, or what are you doing elsewhere?
No, I definitely would not release the games. I think personally, in terms of the way Davey thinks, like, it is justified for him to send the games. Like, in his thinking, like, it's justified for him to be like, hey, send the games to people I know that like can give me some feedback and think if I'm thinking this. I do agree with that, like, in terms of things. That's not personally what I would do. What I would do is just go to the person, like I said. Like, I would just be like, yo, is there something wrong? You've been sending me these games. They kind of sound like a plea for help. So
Absolutely.
if you want to, like, if you need to come to me, I'm here for you. If not, that's okay. You get the response right away. It's very easy. But I can totally understand where Davey's coming from. I was that person, and in anybody in a unconfident like mantra of themselves, if you're not confident in yourself, you're not going to be that kind of person that goes and does confrontation with other people.
For sure. I could see how Davey thought he was helping. Absolutely, I understand that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I mean, finally, does this game hold up? For me, I recommend this game a lot. Will you recommend this game to someone aside from me?
Oh yeah, I totally recommend this game to anybody. It's not just like fun. I don't know if it was because you and I playing together when we played it. The only thing that scared the shit out of me was the people that Coda creates, because they're really kind of creepy. But other than that, like, I had a super
you mean the
fun...
people with like the box heads?
Yeah, with the box
It's
heads.
actually
like,
terrifying.
When you go and meet the council, I like definitely step back. Like, I jump back into the room. Like, I can understand where he's saying the darkness is good if you have to go walk through and see those people. But I really enjoyed this game, and like, I think it's a very good game. Excuse me. I think the beginner's guide is super good, but I also really enjoyed the Stanley Parable. Both these games that Davey has put out has been very, very good, and it is something that you should look into if you're into just simple humor, and also just makes you want to like think and have a good time.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end our very first episode of Buddy I Want You to Play the Beginner's Guide. Connor, thanks for playing one of my favorite games. I can't wait to see what we're playing next. What do you think it is?
Oh, I cannot wait for you to play a game. So the reason why we kind of like started this whole series was for us to like play games nobody else has ever played, like the other person hasn't played before. And AJ, you told me recently that you have never played a Fallout game before, and I was so surprised, because that's one of my favorite games. And recently on these Steam sales, Fallout 4 was on sale, so we decided to pick it up, and I'm gonna make you play Fallout 4
Sounds
for the
great.
first time, and we are gonna have a super fun time. I cannot wait for you to try it. I hope you get some power armor and some sort of like super heavy weapon, or you go. I honestly have never seen you play an RPG, so I'm excited to see where you go in this game.
I'm excited to play too. I was a little disappointed you didn't take advantage of the power armor in this game, but hey, that's for next time.
Yeah.
Well, that's that. I'm Major Fraser,
I'm Caboose. Thanks for watching.
and we'll catch you next time. Oh, stop recording.